Now, the bonus point, as I promised, guys, I always over deliver. The bonus point, point number 6. Hi, chess masters, Coach Sipho here, and this is the last lesson of the Art of Positional Play Chess Series. And congratulations that you started this series all the way to the last video. You can't take this for granted. Nowadays, it is very difficult to start anything all the way to the end. With the introduction of TikTok, people's attention span has drastically dropped. So I'm very, very proud that you started this series from the beginning all the way to the end. You should be very proud of yourself. Now, to those chess masters who just joined us today, it is never too late, chess master. You can always go back to our channel, go to playlists, and go to the middle game folder. Go to the Art of Positional Play Chess Series. Start with the intro video of this series all the way to this video. And that way, you will get more clarity regarding this topic, the art of positional chess. So today we are going to deal with pawns. You are going to learn about pawns. I'm going to share 5 points with you. Once you master these 5 points, you will be able to handle your pawns and use them to their best so that you win more and more games. Then after these 5 points, I'm going to share 1 bonus point with you, which is very, very important. Now, you might ask, why should you give us a bonus point, Coach Sipho? Well, I guess it is part of my character. I like to overwhelm people with more and more and more value. Okay? So now, without any more delays, let's dive into it. Point number 1, we use pawns to create passed pawns so that we can ultimately push our pawns to the end of the board and promote them to bigger pieces. I guess this is the most popular point amongst chess players, especially amongst beginners. You know, beginners like pushing pawns. Okay, first let's talk about passed pawns. What is a passed pawn? A passed pawn is a pawn that can easily march towards the end of the board without being captured by other opponent's pawns. For example, this pawn is not a passed pawn because it cannot move freely to the end of the board. But if, okay, let me create a situation like this. Now, this pawn can march forward all the way to the end of the board without being captured by other pawns. All these black pawns cannot capture this white pawn. So we call that a passed pawn. Now, most players, especially beginners, like pushing pawns even when the game starts. Okay? We usually create passed pawns and try to push our pawns to the end of the board towards the end game. Not in the opening, not in the middle game. But most of beginners, especially those who just started chess, just like pushing pawns. They even make beautiful patterns using pawns. When I coach my students for the first time, you will see them like doing something like this. You can see this is like a pattern. They just like moving pawns. Or sometimes they do a different pattern. Something like this. You see? They change all these patterns and make different patterns. So they move pawns for no reason, and then they just try to move them forward and try to get a queen. We don't push pawns early on. Let's keep this point for the middle game, when there are fewer bigger pieces remaining on the board, meaning most bigger pieces have been exchanged. Now there are many pawns remaining but very few bigger pieces. We call that an end game. Now it is time to push pawns in the end game. Okay, so that is point number 1. Point number 2, we use pawns to improve our pieces. Okay, on the previous lessons, when you learned about the rooks, the bishops, you learned that you should use pawns to activate your pieces. Okay, You should use pawns to activate your pieces. Let's say if the rook is on a file that is closed, then you should use pawns to open those files for the rooks, and use pawns to open diagonals. Let's say a bishop is on a diagonal that is blocked by opponent's pawns. So just use your pawns to break the opponent's pawn chain so that your bishop will have an open diagonal. So let me give you a quick example. This is the game. This is one of my bullet games. I like using bullet games as an example when I am doing these lessons, because by the way, bullet games is 1 minute chess. You don't have enough time to think. You mostly use your intuition, your chess understanding. You don't calculate much. Okay, why do I like using bullet games? Because bullet games, you don't have enough time to think. You kind of apply what you already know about chess. You just use intuition. Okay, so let's look at this game, how I'm going to use pawns, even though it was 1 minute chess. I was playing very fast, to open lines for my pieces. Okay, so I was playing white here. It was bullet chess. So now when you look at this position, the bishop is facing this long pawn chain. So it is not as active. This rook is not on an open file. My pieces, this bishop is not on an open diagonal. So I just want you to pay attention how I'm going to use my pawns to open files for my rook, to open diagonals for my bishop. Pay attention. This is point 2 of how to use your pawns. Open lines for your pieces. Because once your pieces are active, they will fight for you. You helped them by making them active. They will also fight for you and win games for you. Okay, now pay attention. Okay, with this move, I'm trying to open a file for this rook so that it will be active. At the same time, I'm trying to soften up this long pawn chain. Okay, because this bishop is just fighting a thick wall. So I'm trying to soften this pawn chain, which is blocking my bishop, also trying to open for my rook. Okay, for someone who doesn't really understand chess, they might think white hasn't achieved anything. But as you improve, you will rejoice for small achievements as you play chess. This is a big achievement for white. My rook is very active now. Pay attention how I'm going to improve the rest of my pieces. All of them. All of them. Pay attention. And you learned this from the previous lessons. The art of positional chess is all about making sure that you place your pieces on their optimal squares so that they will be very effective where you placed them. Okay, with this, of course, I'm trying to soften this pawn chain again. If black takes, of course, now I can take there with a bishop or with a knight. Okay, so black cannot really take since it will make this pawn weak. Okay, developing more pieces, putting pressure on this pawn chain. Okay, now I took, my opponent took, then I went there attacking that pawn, also taking advantage of the fact that that bishop is undefended. This is also undefended, so this is kind of like a fork, attacking 2 or more pieces at the same time. Okay, now I took this pawn. I took this pawn knowing that if my opponent takes, that pawn is pinned. I will lose a knight, but I will regain a bishop. Okay, even if they take with a knight, I will take with a knight. Once they take, I will regain my piece there. Okay, so those are just small tactics to achieve your plans, which is to make your pieces active. There's nothing special. Once you understand positional chess, tactics will just come natural. Okay, I took, my opponent took, I took. Of course, my opponent cannot take since I'm going to win that bishop. My opponent decided to go back with his or her bishop. Then I went there, attacking that bishop again. And now pay attention, that pawn, that long pawn chain is no longer there. What helped? Did I use pieces to remove that long, thick pawn chain? Of course not. I used my pawns to soften that pawn chain. Now I have an open file for the rook. I have an open diagonal for my bishop. You see, all my pieces are kind of active except for these two pieces, but pay attention to how I will also involve them in the game. My opponent went there, and this also allows another tactic. That tactic is only possible because my pieces are active. Okay, my pieces are active. That is why this tactic is possible. Now let's see, pause the video if you can spot the tactic. Pause the video. I'm going to count 5 seconds and then we'll come back. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Okay, the tactic is that this pawn is soft. Okay, it is a weakness because it is attacked twice and it is only defended twice. We call that pawn insufficiently defended. This bishop is also attacked once. It is defended once. That means this is also insufficiently defended. Okay, this is also insufficiently defended. And then if you want to be good at tactics, you need to pay attention to such things. And if you want to learn more, I recommend Nimzovich's book, My System. It talks about the overprotection of the strategical squares. So these are strategic squares and they are insufficiently defended. That is why I took there. Why am I taking here? I'm removing the defend of this pawn. Now this pawn is only defended once and it is attacked twice. Now fork. The queen cannot take me now because I'm defending. Fork. I'm going to regain my piece back. Remember, you want your pieces to be active. At the same time, you want the opposite for your opponent. Your pieces should be active and restrict the opponent's activity. Make sure opponent's pieces are not as active. With this move, it saves the bishop, but it also reduces the knight's activity since it is pinned. Okay? And pay attention, what really destroyed the opponent's position is this bishop, which was once facing the thick pawn chain. Now it is the one killing the opponent's game. Why is this? Did all this happen by chance? No, I did this intentionally and also consciously. I made sure that I activate my bishop, I activate my rook. I also involved all my pieces except for these two, which I'm going to involve them now. Okay, took one of the pieces, attacking that knight. Took, attacking my bishop. You should defend while attacking at the same time, putting pressure on this knight which is pinned. Okay, the knight is still pinned, not by the bishop this time, not by the bishop this time, but by the queen this time. So you see, again, I'm not just using pawns because I like moving pawns. The only pawns that I move are those that improve the activity of my pieces. This bishop was not as active, but by pushing this pawn, I'm opening a diagonal for it. Okay, so you use pawns to create passed pawn. That's 1. 2, you use pawns to open lines for your pieces. Files for the rook, diagonals for the bishops. Excuse. Okay, improving my bishop, my piece with tempo. Of course, if you just develop your pieces and not attacking at the same time, you give opponent freedom to do whatever they want. But if you develop while attacking, the opponent has no time to develop his or her pieces. Okay, we call that an initiative. Okay, maintaining an initiative. So, but that's a lesson for another day. Okay, improving my other piece, all my pieces are involved now, okay, putting more pressure on that knight. By the way, that knight cannot move. If that knight moves, now I have 3 pieces attacking that knight, 3 pieces, and that knight is defended 2 times, and that knight is pinned to this square, not to a piece this time. I know most players know a piece that is pinned and there's an important piece behind it. This piece is not pinned against an important piece behind it, but it is pinned against an important square. If it moves, then there is a checkmate that will follow. My queen will be sacrificed. If take, then the rook will take, and it will be a checkmate. So the knight cannot move. Hence, that is why black decided to defend that knight. This is called removal of the defender. If you've watched the 100 ways of dying at chess, you are already familiar with these tactics: forks, pins, removal of defender, and so many other tactics mentioned in that video. Okay, now I'm just winning a free knight. Check. In fact, it's just that it was 1 minute chess because there was a fork here. I missed this. It's only now that I'm noticing I missed a fork here, but it doesn't matter. I was playing with seconds. I was left with seconds. Yeah, I'm sure. And then checkmate. Pay attention to how. Look at this game. Look at this game. Quickly look at this game. When the game started, I want you to look at these 2 pieces, especially these 2 pieces. This bishop was facing a very thick pawn chain. This rook was not on an open file. Things did not just happen by chance. I made things happen consciously, okay? Use your pawns to open lines for your pieces. So that is point number 2, okay? Look at what happened here. Look at what happened. You see, the entire diagonal is opened for the bishop. The entire file is opened for the rook, which I just sacrificed. Okay? That is point number 2. Use pawns to open lines for your pieces. Point number 3 is use pawns to fight for the center. Okay? So the pawns that we mainly use are the ones that fight for the center. I'm sure you've heard that avoid moving side pawns in the opening. Like, they are not really helping. Use pawns to open for your pieces, and also use pawns that fight for the center. You also noticed in this position, these pawns are also fighting for the center. You see, everything that is happening with these pawns, even with the first one, was trying to fight for the center while simultaneously opening for my pieces. So use pawns to open for the center. Okay, maybe we should use this game to demonstrate this even better. I want you to pay attention at how I'm going to use my pawns to fight for the center. Fighting for the center, that means you want to be the one with more pawns controlling the center, meaning the opponent cannot just place their pieces in these 4 squares because you have more pawns controlling these squares. Okay, that is point number 3. Pay attention to how I'm going to use my pawns to fight for the center. Okay, I'm playing white again. It was also 1 minute chess, bullet chess. Okay, of course I used this pawn because I'm opening for my bishop, which is what we mentioned on point number 2. Use pawns to open for your pieces. Point 3, also use pawns to fight for the center. Without moving, let's say I just play a random move, a bad move, I'm allowing my opponent to put more pawns in the center and control the center more, since that pawn would be defended by the knight. But with this pawn, I have 2 pieces controlling that square, so the opponent cannot push this pawn twice. Does it make sense? So that is why I played that pawn 2 squares. Okay, my opponent is trying to bring more pieces that will fight for this dark square. We're fighting for the dark squares here. Okay, I also placed my bishop on this long diagonal to fortify that square. Okay, to strengthen that square. Okay, just developing a piece, but of course I don't want to block this bishop. And I'm also planning to use my pawns to fight for the center in the future. So I can't place my knight here blocking my pawns. How will I fight for the center if I block them? Okay. My opponent is trying to prevent my c4 move, but I played it anyways. Take. If they take, and also pay attention that this move is also trying to soften this diagonal so that my bishop will be very active in the near future. That is why I'm playing that, fighting for the center and also aware of my bishop. I want to open that diagonal. I don't want it to be closed. If my opponent takes, that would be fine for me. It would increase the bishop's activity. But of course, my opponent was strong. My opponent knows that he or she also needs to place their pieces on open lines. The rook belongs to an open file. That is dangerous. So I need to develop my pieces while defending my bishop. Okay, now there's a tactic here. If I just do anything, let's say I play that, I'm going to lose a pawn because my opponent is actually threatening to take. If I take, they are going to take this. Now, if I go there, my bishop is left undefended. You see? So that was dangerous. But I saw it, even though it was 1 minute chess. So I removed my bishop. Okay. Improve my pieces. Place them on the files that are likely to be opened. Rooks like open files. Remember, bishops like open diagonals. That is why this bishop is also, I changed the diagonal and saved it from this danger. Okay, that was a blunder because I can win this for free. I'm attacking that square twice. Opponent went there. Of course, it's dangerous. But I have a counter attack since that knight is undefended. Okay. Okay, now here, of course, my opponent is attacking my queen, but I'm willing to sacrifice my queen for 2 rooks because the queen is 9 points and 2 rooks are 5 plus 5, 10 points. So I don't care about my 9 points queen. That is why I took there. And I will also going to win more pieces. I'm also winning a free bishop. Okay. My opponent cannot save that bishop. I'm going to double rooks on the 8th rank now. Okay. And then at this point, my opponent resigned. So point number 3, we use pawns to fight for the center as I did in this game. Point number 4, we want to weaken opponent's pawns. Okay. You know what we want to do with our pawns. We want to create passed pawns so that we'll be able to push them to the end of the board when the game is about to end and promote them to bigger pieces. That is what we do with our pawns. Open lines for our bigger pieces, control the center. But then what do you want to do with the opponent's pawns? Which is point number 4. With the opponent's pawns, you wanna make them weak. Once the opponent's pawns are weak, it's easy for you to attack them. How do you make the opponent's pawns weak? You do that by doubling them on the same file, by isolating them. That means you don't want pawns that are connected, protecting each other. You want one pawn to be far left, one pawn to be far right. You isolate them. The same thing that predators do in the wild when they are chasing their prey. They would attack a group of prey, okay? And then, of course, they are not planning to attack them while they're still in that group. But they know when they charge at them, when they attack them, at some point, they will start being isolated one by one. And they will chase the one that is isolated. Okay? That is the animal strategy. You also use it in chess. You want to isolate opponent's pawns, double them, make them backward pawns, okay, as I'm going to demonstrate on the following game. With this game, you're gonna see how I'm going to isolate opponent's pawns, make them weak. Okay, I'm playing black here. Okay, you might say, but Coach Sipho, you said we should not move side pawns. We only move pawns when we open for our pieces or fighting for the center. This pawn is not fighting for the center. Okay, well, I played that move because that bishop is already attacking here. So this knight can also come here anytime and pile pressure here. Okay, and I'm also doing this for another reason, which you are going to see later. Okay, developing my pieces. I'm going to comment more when I'm moving pawns. Okay, now my opponent has moved a bishop. I want to take here with a tempo. Achieve your plans while attacking at the same time. Why am I taking here? Because I'm opening this diagonal, because I know my bishop will be on this long diagonal. So I'm opening that diagonal in advance. Okay, opening for my bishop. Now you understand the reason for that pawn. To prevent the knight from coming, also to protect the b5 pawn when I finally push it. My bishop is on an open diagonal now. Okay. Why that pawn move? That pawn move, I can already foresee what is going to happen in the future. I know that my rook will come to the c file, and so I'm opening this file in advance and also using the pawn to fight for the center. My opponent has two pawns that could come to the center, and I only have one pawn. So I'm also fighting for the center to reduce opponent's pawns in the center, while also opening for this file for my rook in advance. Okay, you see, I've opened for my rook in advance. Take, went there. Okay. Now, this is the important part. While taking that bishop, I'm actually damaging opponent's pawn structure. As you can see now that these pawns are now doubled. Okay, they are now doubled. They are crippled. Now it's easier to attack them than when they are just normal pawns. Okay, improving my pieces. If you can't attack right away, improve your pieces. Rooks like open files. Okay, improving my bishop. Here is just attacking my piece. I need to attack opponent's pieces. Take. Okay, maybe someone might ask, but Coach Sipho, you have two pieces attacking here. Why don't you just win that pawn? Take and win that free pawn. But then if you do that, you are going to be checkmated, because the opponent is going to come here, and this is what we call back rank. Remember, the bishop is exchanged, so it can't come back since you already exchanged it. So after winning that pawn, my opponent is going to come and checkmate me after this. We call that a back rank. How do you see these things in advance, Coach Sipho? Well, we've discussed this from our previous videos, which is called how to avoid one move blunders. I discussed the thinking system that will help you to not make blunders, even in bullet. Why am I coming here? Improving my pieces, also putting more pressure here. Now I'm really threatening to win a pawn now without moving my rook away from the back rank. Take. Now my bishop is attacking those pawns. So do you see the benefit of creating those weak pawns? Now it's easier to attack them. I won that pawn while attacking the rook. Okay. Okay, by the way, with this move, it has to do with the point that I'm going to mention with the 5th point. We also use our pawns to neutralize opponents' active pieces. Neutralize, that means if you have opponents' pieces that are very, very active, you want to limit their activity. You want to neutralize, push them back, especially when they are in your half or bishops are on the open diagonals. You want it for you. You want your bishops to be on the open diagonals, but you want to block opponents' bishops with your pawns. You don't want them to be on open diagonals. So with this move, I'm already covering the 5th point here. 5th point, use your pawns. Don't push your pawns like for no reason, because once you push your pawns, if opponent's pieces come to your half, pawns cannot come back and drive those pieces out of your half, right? So that is why you should avoid moving pawns forward for no reason. Keep pawns in your half so that when opponents' pieces invade in your territory, you can always push them back. We'll call this neutralizing opponents' most active pieces. Now, this knight is very active. I'm driving it out of my half. It went back, and it is also dangerous. Attacking my bishop, so I should save my bishop. Attacking my pawn, but don't worry about that. I'm still neutralizing opponents' pieces. This bishop was on an open diagonal. I drove that knight away from my half. Now I'm closing that diagonal for my opponent's bishop. You see, my pieces are becoming active, and I'm also reducing opponent's activity. Okay? I don't care about that pawn. If you can attack, counter attack instead of defender. So I'm attacking that knight. My opponent has no time to take my pawn. Now I'm winning after this because the pawn is pinned. I mean, the knight is pinned. It cannot move. I'm going to win it on the next move. Now, someone might say, but Coach Sipho, my opponent did not lose the knight. They can defend it with this. Well, I will drive that king away. And then after that, I'm going to win that knight. Okay, my opponent did something smart. Defending that bishop like that. But after piling more pressure, my opponent was able to see the future, what is going to happen to him. So my opponent resigned because I have 2 pieces attacking the knight. My opponent has 1. If they try to bring the king, remember my bishop can always come and drive it back. My opponent noticed that he or she was going to lose a piece, so they decided to resign in advance. They did not want to see what was going to happen at the end. Okay, now the 5th point, the last point, this is what we already covered. Use your pawns to drive, to neutralize opponents' pieces that are very active out of your half. Chase them out. Okay, also block diagonals for your bishop. Now the bonus point, as I promised guys, I always over deliver. The bonus point, point number 6, is that you, what is point number 6? What is point number 6? Okay, point number 6, you need to, remember we said, don't push your pawns forward for no reason. Because once pawns are pushed forward, the opponent's bigger pieces can invade your pieces in the future, occupy those weak squares. And your pawns cannot come back because pawns cannot move back. Those pawns cannot come back and drive away those pieces. So you should try to, the bonus point, try to provoke the opponent to push their pieces, their pawns forward, knowing that as they push their pawns forward, they will leave weak squares behind, and you will occupy those weak squares with one of your pieces. Now, the question for the day is, which piece is good at occupying those weak squares in the opponent's camp? We learned about that in the previous lessons. Now let us know on the comment section, which piece is best at occupying weak squares in the opponent's territory. Let us know. Thank you for learning, for participating in this Art of Positional Play Chess Series all the way from the beginning to the end. We truly appreciate that. And also help our channel grow by smashing that subscribe button so that we can also grow, you know. Until next video, peace.